Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the special called meeting of the Williamsburg City Council. Ms. McKay, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Here.
Ms. Kernshire.
Here.
Okay, first item on the agenda is to consider the approval of the remote participation request from Councilmember Barb Ramsey for the January 12th, 2026 special called meeting. Should we let her in? Is there a motion?
I move that City Council approve a remote participation request from Councilmember Barbara Ramsey for the January 12th, 2026 special called City Council meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McKay.
Ms. Williams.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire.
Aye.
Okay, welcome, Ms. Ramsey. All right, public hearing today is a public hearing to consider an appeal of the ARB's denial of ARB number 25-118 and ARB number 25-119 requesting design approval for the construction of two single-family detached homes at 216 and 317 Indian Springs Road. Ms. Griffin, welcome.
Hi, good morning, Mayor Pons and members of City Council. The purpose of today's meeting is to consider an appeal to the decision of the Architectural Review Board for the denial of two applications. They are application 25-118 and 25-119. These are for the exterior design of two new single-family detached homes located at 206 and 317 Indian Springs Road. The owner of the properties is 207 and 317 Indian Springs Road, LLC. The applicant is appealing the ARB's denial, asserting that the decision was not based on the design standards found in the city's design review guidelines, but instead on the future use of the homes as rental properties. Today, the City Council's role is to affirm, reverse, or modify the decisions of the ARB in whole or in part based on the applicable provisions of the Design Review Guidelines and the Article 9 of the zoning ordinance. The two properties are legally identified as lots 47 and 48 in the Indian Springs subdivision, and they are located in the RS2 zoning district. This zoning district allows single-family detached homes to be built by right. The properties are also located in the AP2 Architectural Review District, and prior to the erection of structures in this district, as well as other AP and CP districts, exterior design must be approved by the ARB prior to construction. Therefore, a denial of the exterior design does not allow the homes to be built. When considering design of any new structure or addition, the ARB requires the applicant to submit a conceptual review. This allows the applicant to hear feedback from the ARB prior to a decision being made by them. The ARB looks at colors, materials, massing, and other architectural elements on the exterior prior to final review. In this case, the applicant received 3 conceptual reviews by the ARB. And I want to bring up the PowerPoint so we're able to see the pictures of all 3 of those reviews. The first review was held on March the 11th. And these are the homes that were provided to the ARB for that conceptual review. The ARB did provide several comments, and they are found here. They had questions about the fenestration on both sides of the structure. The windows needed to be aligned on the sides of the structures. The secondary roof line needed to be moved. There were also several inconsistencies with the packet, and so the packet did not, the designs in the packet did not match. And so another option was also for the applicant to show if the shutters were going to be operable. The design review guidelines require all shutters to be operable, and they cannot be nailed to the home. The second conceptual review was held in May 27th, and you see there's a few changes to the buildings. There's also a change, and now there's a shared driveway. The first conceptual review, the applicant spoke about the size of the garage. That was a question, and the garage could not fit a car at that time. There was some thought of having golf carts to be used, and so that there was a change and there was a shared driveway that could accommodate cars. The ARB did not feel the home designs were unique. They were identical. They had no variety. There were questions regarding the shared driveway. There was also questions about the incompatibility of the design of the houses with the neighborhood. Indian Springs has custom design homes, and these homes are not custom. There continued to be errors in the packet. The color renderings did not match the actual renderings that were provided. And then again, there were questions about inconsistencies with the packet and then the topography of the property. The ARB likes to see the home exactly how it will be on the property to make use of the topography. And here, this was flat, and the property is not flattened. There was also some questions about the fate of the trees in the front yard. The applicant returned for a conceptual review. This is their last and final conceptual review, and this review was held in August of 2025. By that time, the applicant had hired Hopke and Harrison, and this was the rendering that was provided at that time. There were questions and some ideas that the ARB wanted the applicant to change. That first rendering was of 206. This is 317 Indian Springs Road. The applicant hired the architect, and they were able to provide several different vantage points so the ARB could see how the houses would look from several different angles. Also, the applicant took the liberty of going through and doing a housing inventory, an architectural survey of the properties. And they showed various architectural styles in Indian Springs, and they attempted and did match the architectural styles of the homes in Indian Springs to the houses that were being suggested for the ARB. And just to go over what they were, I will provide that to you. They're Dutch colonial home style. I have several different papers, so forgive me for not having all this. And there were several questions that the ARB had at that time. They included, actually there were just 3 questions. The 3 questions were where the HVAC system would be, and actually if it would be screened in the trash cans, that they would be screened. And the applicant did provide that screening for the HVAC systems and also provided screening for the trash receptacles. There were also questions about the roof, and there were questions about the massing. All of those questions were answered by the applicant for the ARB. They then went on to a final review, and that final review was where the applicant required or requested a final decision of the ARB, and that was held on October the 14th. On October the 14th, as in all of the meetings that were held, there were citizens that came out in opposition of the application. And at the final meeting, the ARB did render a decision, and that decision was 6-0 to 1, and that was that they rendered a decision to deny the applications, and there was 1 person that abstained. The reasons given were the size of the homes in the neighborhood are 3 to 4 bedrooms with 2 to 3 baths. This proposal has 4 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, and they felt that it was less than 8% of homes have this configuration, and therefore the proposal was not in character with the neighborhood. I would like to note that the ARB did not provide a decision together. There was not a collaborative decision. These were different reasons that different ARB members gave for their denial, their individual denials. 1 person did talk about the intent of the design review guidelines was a reference as a concept of denying the use of the buildings because of the rental or commercial in use. The approval of a commercial use was seen as intrusive in a historic district with implications for other neighborhoods. There were at least 2 ARB members that gave this opinion. Others expressed the importance of considering the public input received in opposition to the request. Several members made that observation. And lastly, some ARB members acknowledged the board's authority is limited to the review of exterior architectural design and not the use. and those members expressed concern regarding the potential impacts of the proposed development, the extent of public opposition, and broader neighborhood considerations, and subsequently voted to deny the application. There was an applicant who felt this way, a ARB member who felt this way, and they abstained. So today, the City Council's role is to affirm, to reverse, or modify the decision of the Architectural Review Board. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Got a couple questions, but I'll just start with some, and then I'll pass the baton. So just to confirm what we're doing here today, we're here to look at this project from the lens of the ARB and apply the standards and the guidelines of the ARB to our decision. Is that?
That is exactly correct. The ARB gave a decision, the applicant appealed that decision, and your job today is to act as the ARB, looking at the design review guidelines and the zoning ordinance, chapter 21, Article 9.
That zoning ordinance is referencing the ARB's.
The zoning ordinance reference the ARB, yes,
Right.
sir.
So can we apply other zoning issues to this? For example, if this may be considered a commercial enterprise because of the notion that these may be rental properties, which I don't think has been confirmed by the applicant, or maybe it has. But if we were to consider that a commercial enterprise and that doesn't conform to the zoning of a residential neighborhood, is that something that we can ponder as part of our decision?
No, it is not. The ARB does not have that authority. That authority is given to the Planning Commission in advisory role and then to City Council. Actually, in Section 21-861, which is Article 9, it states, "Nothing in this article shall be construed to prevent the use of any land, building, or structure permitted by the regulations of the zoning district in which such land, building, or structure is located." Simply stated, that is Article 9 under the Architectural Review Board, and so the authority for uses is given to the legislative body, the City Council. The ARB, and in your case, you're acting as the ARB, so your job is to review the design review guidelines in accordance to Article 9 to make the decision for this appeal.
So the intent that we hear that some residents have an issue with is not for consideration.
It is not for consideration, no, sir.
When we look as an ARB, and I did serve on ARB a couple lifetimes ago, I think Scott was still there. And welcome ARB members for being here. Thank you for being here. When we look at applying these guidelines, the interior layout and functions of the inside aren't relevant to the guidelines, because the guidelines only really look at the exterior of the building, colors, materials, massing, those types of things. I respect that window alignments and those types of things may have some relevance to the interior walls and that type of thing. So maybe understanding where the walls are, but what happens inside is not for consideration.
That's correct. The ARB only looks at exterior renovations or exterior things when it comes to the guidelines.
And so just to be also clear, so the applicant had been before the ARB on 3 different occasions? And on
Yes,
each
for
of these
conceptual review.
occasions, the ARB worked with the applicant to help with the design so that it would be more appealing and more conforming to the neighborhood?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Vice Mayor, any other questions?
Yeah, the mayor just touched on a question I wanted to ask about the applicant meeting. Based on what you presented and what I've read, the applicant met all the requested changes from the ARB as they went through these 3 conceptual considerations, and then obviously it changed on the final. The other question I had was, it seemed a little unusual to me in my experience that historically the ARB has denied applications with very clear citing of not in compliance with code or the guidelines. In this case, as you stated, it wasn't a clear-cut definition provided of why the application was denied.
That is correct. They gave individual reasons of denial, but there was not a single reason given for the denial as it relates to the design review guidelines.
And that is required, correct?
That is required in the zoning ordinance, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, thank you. All of these clarifying questions, this has been very clarifying. I had the same ones about whether or not the applicant had met the requested design changes, and it sounds like they had, like the screening of the HVAC and those sorts of things
Yes,
there at the
ma'am.
last. Okay, and I think my questions may be more applicable to the city attorney than to the planning commission, or planning director. Are single-family dwellings permitted in the Architectural Preservation District 2?
Yes.
And even if a dwelling is going to be used as a rental unit, a rental property, understanding this is outside the role of the ARB anyway, but if it's going to be used as a rental property, is there a reason why we can't, as city council, if we were acting that role, consider that commercial use?
No.
So we could consider,
No, you can't consider that a commercial use. The state code says that rental properties are not commercial uses, and so that's beyond the scope of what city council has the authority to do.
okay, thank you.
Williams, any questions?
Yes, many of my questions have already been answered, but just to clarify, I understand that there needs to be one single reason for not moving the project, the proposal forward. Or, just out of curiosity, were any of the individual reasons provided, if that was the sole reason legitimate for not moving the project forward? I'm not sure if that makes sense.
It does make sense. The reasons provided were not design reasons. There were not reasons that the applicant did not provide design review or design or aesthetics that were required in Chapter 7 of the design review guidelines. And so, no, they would not have been legitimate reasons to deny the application.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yes, please.
Ms. Shelton, on following up on Kurt Shear's question. Just because it's an LLC does not classify it as a commercial property.
People can own properties in many different iterations. They can own them in trust, they can own them individually, they can own them jointly, they can own them in partnerships, they can own them in LLCs. The material point is, what's the end use of that property? And the end use of that property is as a dwelling.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions before I open the public hearing?
I have none.
Oh, you're not sitting here, I forget.
I know, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
My apologies, Ms. Ramsey. Okay, with that, I will open the public hearing, and I have a number of speakers cards, and I'll call these names out on the cards first, but then if anybody else would like to come forward, they're certainly welcome to. And first is Mr. Bill Dell, who also submitted in writing some stuff, so. Oh, you're right. So should I let the applicant come first? I'll do that. Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor,
Thank
members of the council. My name is Danny Yates. I'm a little bit out of my wheelhouse here today. I'm from Kaufman and Knowles, and a double William and Mary alum. So I appreciate all the work that you all do on behalf of the citizens of the city of Williamsburg. I'm here today representing 206 and 317 Indian Springs Road LLC. I don't think y'all really need to hear from a lawyer. You've got an excellent lawyer yourself here. But I'm going to yield most of my time to our architect, Mr. Harrison, who's done an incredible job educating me about this project. But I just very briefly would like to make a few points. First, I believe y'all have at pages 358 through 363 of your packet, you've got our appeal paperwork that Mr. Zhang has prepared. So I don't want to go through all of those points. I don't think it would serve the best interest of council's time today. But just, it's interesting, in preparing for today's hearing, I started thinking that the issues that we're debating are so, they're unique to the fabric of Williamsburg in many ways. And you think back to 300 plus years ago, St. George Tucker, a student of George Wythe, a student at the William Mary Law School, he once stated that the rights of property must be sacred and must be protected. And that is what falls to council today in reviewing the ARB's decision, is that we have tremendous respect for the work of the ARB and for all of the citizens who are gathered here today. The fact that they are so engaged on this issue, I think, speaks volumes about our community and what a great place it is to work and live. That said, the scope of council's decision today and what you're tasked with looking at is very narrow. It simply has the applicant, our client, complied with what they've been ordered to do, and in this case, we submit that they have. They've complied with the multiple iterations of the conceptual review, and most importantly, I think the questions by council have already hit the nail on the head. The issue is narrow here, and it's not what might in the future be used with this property. And I'd say this to anyone who's here: the property is listed for sale, so if anyone has $1.2 million and would like to either property, our firm would probably handle the closing ultimately. So we have no sense of what this might be. It could be a single-family home. The dean of the law school has 9 children. He had a hard time when he moved to Williamsburg finding a house that would accommodate his family. A 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom house is not unusual in this day and age. And if we look at the history of the neighborhood, those are older homes. It's more common nowadays to have a bathroom per ensuite. So I don't want to eat into too much of Mr. Harrison's time because he's far more articulate, and I think his visuals are going to help explain why this project is important. It's important to the community. And one point we'd also put out there that isn't in any of our materials: looking at potential uses is, again, outside the scope of the authority in the review today, but one potential use that this council and the ARB has granted in other cases, these homes could potentially be used under Virginia law and under Williamsburg City Ordinance as in many ways. One of them that could strike an issue with the Fair Housing Act is that a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom house of this nature would meet the qualifications to be a group home under Virginia law. And that is a protected class that looks at folks who would be able to potentially live there. So we have no idea what the future of this home, these homes may ultimately be, but I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Harrison. I've already used too much of his time, but I appreciate, and we're here to answer any questions. We thank the council for their time today.
Welcome, Mr. Harrison.
Good morning, Mayor Pons and the members of the City Council. My name is John Harrison. I'm appearing today in my capacity as a licensed architect in Virginia and president of Hopke Harrison, a local architecture firm up at 1156 Jamestown Road. And I had an extensive presentation that I would have typically given, to the ARB to go through the aesthetics of the homes. I think you've hit on a lot of my points, and so I'm going to abbreviate what I said, but I'm happy to answer your questions related to the aesthetics. If you don't mind, I will read through a couple of points, and forgive me if I get the technology wrong here. Our firm was engaged in May of 2025 to assist the property owner of 206 and 317 Indian Springs Road, an assessment of and refinement to the design of 2 proposed single-family dwellings on those lots, which had undergone several previous conceptual reviews by the ARB, developed by a different designer. As with any building endeavor, this project consists of multiple complex issues, and they all need to be addressed. They include questions of zoning and building code compliance, stormwater management, construction financing, myriad of others. While each of those are important, the specific issues I think today at hand is whether the design of the project as presented is in compliance with the ARB guidelines adopted in Article 9 of the Code of the City of Williamsburg. And therefore, I think the pertinent issues are: to what extent will the buildings be architecturally compatible with historic buildings in the Indian Springs neighborhood? Is the general design, proportion, scale, building materials, texture, and color of the proposed buildings appropriate to the Indian Springs neighborhood? Are the buildings consistent with the design criteria as adopted by the review board? And 4, are the proposed buildings consistent with the comprehensive plan's goals for historic preservation, visual quality, and design? And so our approach to the initial aesthetic design of buildings within an ARB district requires us to evaluate the programmatic goals of the owner as they relate to the design opportunities and limitations that the guidelines provide. And so, with few exceptions, a building doesn't exist in a vacuum and must respond to its surroundings. And that's reinforced by the fact that we have guidelines. Therefore, the assessment of the site, not only in the physical characteristics of specific lots, but also a more macroscopic scale of the surrounding vicinity, helps to aid in our design decisions. In the case of these homes, we quickly determined that the desire for the owner to approach the design with a traditional aesthetic would necessitate a systematic review of the surrounding homes and lots. And so we produced this graphic to understand the size of lots, the size of buildings as they're assessed in the city's GIS system. So this slide coalesces that information. The next slide just illustrates how the two buildings correspond to one another on their specific lots, and I'll skip some of my information here. Slides 3 and 4 address the aesthetic solutions. The proposed homes are designed to key into the existing fabric of the neighborhood, which is a mixture of colonial revival, Dutch colonial, Virginia Gambrel colonial revival, and American eclectic. Our partie, which is kind of the basic formulation of the plan, is born of simple rectangular forms with expanding volumes, simulating modification of the buildings over time. The mimicry of a progression of time, seen in other buildings throughout Williamsburg, brings with it a sense of familiarity to the residents, and it essentially shows an evolution of buildings over time. So this slide focuses on the overall form of the home. And slide 4 is the 317 Indian Springs. I'm sorry. Slide 4. This is 317 Indian Springs. It's a Virginia Gambrel, Dutch colonial style. It takes cues from the Travis and Barrett House on Henry and Francis Street. It's a cross Gambrel style, varying level of trim and decoration, accentuate the living area from a simpler form that's addressed at the garages. The next slide is 206 Indian Springs, and this is the home that references an American vernacular form. This is similar to the buildings on Jamestown Road between Cary and Boundary Street. The massing of this and the architectural decoration again focuses on the living space as being more detailed than the ancillary uses, which are simpler in form. So one question that the ARB had for us previously was respect to massing, and I've run out of time, but
Well, as the applicant, we'll extend you some additional time. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I did want to address the question of massing because it's important. Developing a building in a vacuum, you may end up with a 3-story McMansion, if you will, next to a 1-story cape. So we wanted to make sure that the massing of these buildings were consistent with the neighborhood. So these graphics strip away the details and really help us to focus in, are the buildings commensurate with what's surrounding? So going through like there's a graphical problem with that slide. We'll skip over that and end with this slide, which this illustrates massing of residences throughout AP2 district, many in the Indian Springs neighborhood, but not all. And so to look at the relative massing of these homes versus other homes of a similar nature, it's difficult to decipher which are our homes and which are not. So I would ask the board to consider that with respect to the Architectural Review Board guidelines, I believe that the designs meet all four of the elements that we discussed at the very beginning. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, now with that, I'll open the public hearing portion of this, and we'll go back to Mr. Dell, who, as I was saying, did submit, I guess, his comments for the record, which I have. So, Mr. Dell, would you like to come forward? Bill? Mr. Dell? Yep. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Let me rearrange my notes here. I was just getting ready to add some more after hearing the opening remarks of the lawyers and others here. Well, good morning, Mayor Pons, Vice Mayor Dent, and other members of council. I thank you for the opportunity to let you hear my thoughts about the issue before you. I stand here today to respectfully ask that you uphold the ARB denial of ARB 25-118 and 119. As stated previously at numerous council meetings, I've been a resident of the city for 26 years. 18 of those years, I was a resident on Indian Springs. Although still considered by many to be a newbie in town, I hope that by now I have progressed to the point where my thoughts are valued and in the best interest of the city. When I purchased my home on Indian Springs in 1999, the neighborhood was an eclectic combination of differing architectural styles, a mixture of single-family residents, some old and retired, others younger, first-time homeowners with small children, many of whom were struggling to make ends meet. It was the iconic neighborhood of the American dream. It was safe, it was friendly, within walking distance of town and Colonial Williamsburg, and filled with long-term residents who possessed not only a stake, but as well a long-term interest in the preservation of our community and beautiful city. We were on a first-name basis with all of our neighbors. We knew all of their children. We supported one another during good times and bad. This was the way it was, and the reason people wanted to live in the city of Williamsburg, and it was the reason my wife and I decided to move here. Unfortunately, that is not so much the case anymore. The total failure and lack of interest of the College of William and Mary in providing adequate on-campus resident student housing has, over the last few years, caused a change in the demographics of our neighborhoods close to the college. Single-family homes, once owned and maintained by traditional single-family units, have evolved into student rentals, most owned by absentee landlords who have no interest in our community or neighborhoods other than the revenue generated by an inflated student rental market. Therefore, the single-family character of our neighborhoods has become increasingly difficult to maintain. It is past time to take the necessary steps to reverse this trend. And make no mistake about it, every person in this room knows the intent of the building of these two units on Indian Springs. They are clearly for student rentals and bring all of the problems thereto. All we are asking today is your help in our efforts to maintain the single-family character in our in-town neighborhoods. Should you approve the appeal before you this morning, rather than to start reversing this downward spiral in our neighborhoods, you will undoubtedly set the stage and precedent for the wholesale decline of not only the Indian Springs neighborhood, but as well all of our inner-city neighborhoods close to the college. There are precious few parcels of land in the city remaining for possible development in the future. Over many weeks, the ARB, with considerable public input, thoroughly vetted the pros and cons of the proposed Indian Springs development and unanimously decided it was not in character with surrounding neighborhood and should be denied. It's time for us to stand up and join the ARB in denying future development that is not in the character of single-family zone neighborhoods. To not uphold the ARB decision will open the door for further takeover by college and absentee investors of single-family zone property throughout the city. I very respectfully request you uphold the ARB's denial of ARB 125, or 25, 118, and 119. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dell. Next speaker's card I have is Ms. Ruth Kaiser. Welcome, Ms. Kaiser. Just state your name and address for the record and keep your comments to about 5
Went to
minutes.
the bank like this last week and nobody blinked an eye. Times have changed. Ruth Kaiser, 609 Richmond Road. Single-family dwelling is how these structures are classified. And there is this open-ended question about use. Very succinctly, there is truth and there is intent in everything written about law for the Commonwealth of Virginia, the country of the United States, calling this single family and then ignoring what the intent is does not do us any justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker's card I have is Missy Carr. Welcome, Ms. Carr.
Missy Carr, 316 Indian Springs. The first rule of preservation is that thoughtful planning and expert consultation should always precede irreversible change. The members of the ARB are our experts in the preservation of Williamsburg's historic districts. The ARB voted unanimously to deny the development of the former Hornsby property as was proposed by Mr. Field. The ARB members followed the city's architectural review guidelines. Mr. Field is appealing the ARB's denial, asserting that the decision was based on speculative assumptions regarding the use of the property. Should use of a property in a historic residential neighborhood be considered? Absolutely. Especially when the neighborhood is already in danger of losing permanent residents and becoming off-campus housing and party sites. In addition to paint color and materials, there are other factors which must be considered. The ARB guidelines state the following goals when considering a development. Will it be compatible with the neighborhood? Will it enhance the quality of life of the residents? What is the role it will play? Will its use be in keeping with the character of the historic residential neighborhood? Mr. Field purchased the former Hornsby property and turned the home into a student rental. This rental has already become a nuisance. We endure loud music during parties, drunken students yelling curse words at all hours, rude behavior directed at the neighbors. We call the police often. One incident occurred the night of my daughter's wedding in Colonial Williamsburg. Friends and family returned to our house only to witness police cars, drunken students, and angry neighbors. Additionally, Mr. Field has received 2 violations from the Board of Zoning Appeals. He was cited for overoccupancy and for cars parking on the adjacent lot. It's also the only house in the neighborhood with a sign promoting vodka drinks. Not much compatibility demonstrated. So let's consider the 2 additional structures he wants to build next door. Based on presentations at the ARB, it is a fair conclusion that he also intends to make these student rentals. We will then have 3 student rentals all in a row. This exacerbates an already existing problem. Too many rentals, too many parties, too many cars. Our quality of life is not enhanced. The landlords are not providing housing for students out of concern for them. These are commercial enterprises. At an average of $2,000 per renter, these landlords are making lots of money. Result, the landlords make the money, the students get to party, and Indian Springs suffers. This scenario does not play a positive role in our neighborhood. Consider the precedent that this development will set for other city neighborhoods. Those residents are also concerned. Several are here today. Others have written to City Council to express their support for upholding the ARB's decision. Many Indian Springs residents are alumni of the college or work, teach, and volunteer there. We attend college events. We don't hate the college or the students. We enjoy living nearby. What we don't enjoy are landlords taking over our neighborhood and the disrespectful behavior some of their renters exhibit. Our homes are major investments. The neighborhood's unhealthy trend towards becoming predominantly student rental is devastating to us. We still have families with young children in Indian Springs. Please do something to retain these families and to encourage new families to move here. Indian Springs is an amazing neighborhood. We love it, we are protecting it. So here's the question. What would you choose to hear if this were your neighborhood? The children singing, laughing, playing, riding their bikes around the neighborhood, running to the playground after school, or the relentless thumping music emanating from a college party house, coupled with the disruption caused by party goers? I think we all know the answer, so please vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. Next speaker's card I have is Mr. Henry Hart.
Sorry?
I said thank you, Ms. Carr.
Thank you.
Next card I have is Mr. Hart.
Thank you. So I'm Henry Hart. My wife, Susanna Livingston, and I live at 309 Indian Springs Road. We've lived there since 1997, and we raised our 2 children there. Our property is right next to the old Hornsby property that Mike Field owns now. I read the appeal before you, and I understand the lawyer's decision to focus on what he calls the, quote, exterior architectural features of the houses that Field plans to build. And I think I understand the lawyer's frequent references to the houses as single-family residences. And since Field obviously wants to build the houses, I can understand why the appeal concludes, quote, simply put, the actions of the ARB are illegal, arbitrary, and abuses of discretion. I find it hard, though, to accept the judgment that the ARB was illegal, arbitrary, abusive, and indiscreet when it rejected Field's plans. The Architecture Review Guidelines state very clearly that when considering new projects in Williamsburg, the ARB should consider other factors besides architectural ones. Here is what the document says, quote, the guiding principles behind the design review guidelines is to enhance the quality of life for all residents and visitors to the city by preserving the community's character and desirable aesthetic features, To ensure that this character is preserved, it is necessary to protect significant features from destruction and ensure that new projects in the city do not detract from the identifiable character of the community. Williamsburg's comprehensive plan makes a similar point when it says, quote, strong, healthy neighborhoods are critical to city residents' quality of life, and the city is committed to preserving and enhancing them. As you know from listening to previous complaints of Indian Springs residents, the new owner of the Hornsby property and the tenants have made almost no attempt to contribute to a strong, healthy neighborhood and to the residents' quality of life. In fact, they've made our lives miserable. I'm sure they know this, but the new owner and his lawyers don't believe the ARB has the right to consider the quality of life in a neighborhood. They believe the ARB should only focus on things like a building's, and I'm quoting from the appeal, walls, roof, doors, shutters, windows, trim, deck, columns, patio, and so on. The appeal states, quote, the ARB's decisions on the ARB applications are incorrect because they were based on improper grounds. Those improper grounds allude in part to comments from residents about the deteriorating quality of life in the neighborhood since Field bought the Hornsby property. Field's December 2nd appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals for violations on his Indian Springs property made a similar argument. In that appeal, he indicated that the residents' complaints to the ARB were improper, incorrect, and illegal. He emphasized what he called the, quote, unlawful campaign by certain Indian Springs residents, supported and echoed by city officials, to intimidate and exclude renters, students, and young adults from the Indian Springs neighborhood. Field referred to me as one of the residents who participated in this unlawful campaign. He wrote, and I quote, Henry Hart's email, which was distributed widely and cited during ARB proceedings, labels renters as dangerous and undesirable and falsely accuses students of crime and misconduct. My wife, Susanna, was also cited for commenting improperly and behaving illegally. Field stated, quote, evidence demonstrates that Ms. Livingston's complaints were not motivated by genuine health and safety concerns. Her complaints were, quote, discriminatory, and she had committed, quote, extensive violations on her own property. My wife and I received a violation notice from the city's property inspector, Greg Stanley, but when Greg came to our property to check for violations, he didn't find any. What he found was that some of the photos Field had presented as evidence of violations on our property were actually of violations on his property. The comments my wife and I sent to the ARB and City Council, which Field said were illegal or false, focused on the way Field and his tenants have affected our health and safety concerns.
Mr. Hart, you've exceeded your time. If you just wrap up real quick.
Yes. I've been struggling with cancer for the last 6 years, and the stress and exhaustion caused by parties on Field's property, which have regularly lasted until 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, have affected my health. After one party last fall that ended around 4 a.m., I had to be taken by ambulance to the emergency room at the Riverside Doctors Hospital. As for my wife's concerns for safety, last fall her car was almost hit on Indian Springs Road by a student speeding toward a party. It was especially upsetting because about a year before, we had hit by a young person driving 100 miles an hour, a young person who was killed in the accident, and my wife suffered a broken neck, a concussion, a broken rib, and other injuries. I was injured as well.
Yep.
The appeal before you today argues that none of these quality of life concerns should matter in decisions made by the ARB.
Thank you, Mr. Hart.
We think our concerns matter.
Thank you. Next speaker's card I have is Ms. Amy Dassler. saying it correctly? Just state your name and address for the record, and please keep your
Good
comments to
morning,
about
I'm
5 minutes.
Amy Dassler, and I live at 312 Indian Springs Road. The appeal of the ARB denial of 2 single-family detached homes at 206 and 317 Indian Springs Road asserts that the ARB improperly considered use rather than design standards, and city staff has stated the same. But as has already been quoted, the 2021 comprehensive plan states that the guiding principle behind the design review guidelines is to enhance the quality of life for all residents and visitors to the city. The stated purpose of the design aesthetic objectives in the ARB design review guidelines is, quote, to assure that new buildings and uses will be in keeping with the character of the various older neighborhoods within the architectural preservation districts. The comprehensive plan also contains the following statement of intent for the establishment of architectural preservation districts. These regulations are intended to create an atmosphere for compatible future growth, to prevent the intrusion of adverse environmental influences, to ensure that new structures and uses will be in keeping with the character of the district. When a person or entity purchases multiple adjoining parcels in an established neighborhood, it is reasonable to view their intent as corporate development. When that developer enters into a neighborhood described in the comprehensive plan as significant because of its shared parks, parkways, and walkways, with an air of entitlement and disregard for their neighbors' shared sense of community, it's difficult to see how the development will enhance the quality of life for all residents. Such a development in a historically significant neighborhood feels very much like an intrusion of adverse environmental influences. And when the main architectural feature on the front elevations for an American vernacular style cottage and a traditional Dutch colonial is a wide 2-car garage that is longer than the dwelling itself, it doesn't look like a desirable aesthetic feature. Your own comprehensive plan stresses the importance of quality of life, neighborhood character, and building use. The ARB design review guidelines specifically mentions building use as a contributing factor to neighborhood character. So it seems reasonable and right that future use of these homes should be considered along with the design standards.
Thank you. Next speaker's card I have is Ms. Susanna Livingston. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Susanna Livingston, 309 Indian Springs Road. As Henry said, we raised our kids there. We moved in 1997. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak. I'm going to take about 2.5 minutes. As we approach today's meeting, I decided to take a deep dive into the governing documents of the city's Architectural Review Board. The words preserve and preservation occur literally hundreds of times. I was struck by this and decided to look up words closely related to preservation. Its synonyms are maintenance, protection, and care. For a moment, I'd like to call attention to the elephant in the room, which is the fact that an influx of young, often teenage, short-term renters in a residential neighborhood means not maintenance, protection, or care, but the very opposite. Some of you may quibble with my use of the word fact here, but we all have eyes and ears and have seen and heard evidence of this fact over and over and over again in our downtown neighborhoods. I'd like to just show the council. I don't know if I can come any closer. You can probably see. Thank you. This photo was taken on December 29th. This is a driveway on Indian mess, and Careless and neglectful absentee landlords, of course, they exist everywhere, but we all know that some are much worse than others. Careless and neglectful absentee landlords not only do not provide maintenance, protection, and care of their properties, they knowingly allow harm to the properties, to the surrounding neighborhood, and to the quality of life of the families who live there. They knowingly allow harm. The investor who owns 311 Indian Springs and the lots at 206 and 317 insists that the new houses will be single-family homes. My husband and I and our longtime friends in the neighborhood earnestly hope that this will be the case. But frankly, because we have taken in abundant evidence with our own eyes and ears, and because we were not born yesterday, we cannot trust this assertion, nor should anyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker card I have is Eddie Woodward. Welcome, sir.
Morning. My name is Eddie Woodward. I live at 330 Indian Springs Road, and I think everyone has talked to you about how charming Indian Springs is, and in order to keep this under 5 minutes, I think I'm going to kind of jump down, kind of move into the meat of it, which is our idealistic environment is now under siege with the possible construction of commercial rental units in the heart of our neighborhood, built explicitly for college students. The unfortunate fact of the matter is, over the years, the character and flavor of the neighborhood have been trending away from this idealistic family foundation more and more of a transient student population. Simply put, as college students move in, the families move out. And it's simple math because of the limited number of homes in our neighborhood. Once the rental properties get turned, or once these residential homes get turned into rental properties, they never turn back. Until now, this trend, squeezing out families and homeowners, has moved at a slow pace. However, the trend is about to be accelerated by the construction of 2 commercial rental units. This will undoubtedly be the point of no return and the final nail in our coffin. I love the diversity of our neighborhood, including the college students who live there, and it is in their own special way they add to the character and charm of the neighborhood. They bring a life and vitality to Indian Springs. However, they should never be permitted to dominate the neighborhood, because once this happens, it will destroy the inherent character and family fabric of Indian Springs, as well as the charming nature of its homes and natural landscapes. College students and commercial rental properties such as these should not be a problem, because the city has a responsibility to ensure that they are not permitted to overtake entire neighborhoods. There needs to be restrictions to preserve the affinity and attractiveness of the Indian Springs neighborhood and all of the city's neighborhoods. The permanent residents, such as those that are in attendance here today, are just that, permanent. We are invested in the neighborhood, literally, and live there because we love the Indian Springs neighborhood. Everyone, including students, should be able to enjoy living here, but there need to be parameters as to how we move forward. It's the only responsible thing to do. Go to any college or university, city or town, and you will find college slum neighborhoods. Those college slums were once charming urban neighborhoods in very desirable locations with families and children. However, once the transformation occurs, those family-friendly neighborhoods and the quality of life never return. Is this what you want to happen to Indian Springs? Not imposing any sort of rental restrictions or guidelines would be a disservice to the historic integrity of the neighborhood, the residents, and the city itself. As anyone can see, many of the rental properties throughout the city have avoided updating and maintenance to avoid the ARB standards. Burns, Griffin, and Indian Springs are arguably among the most iconic neighborhoods in the city of Williamsburg. I frequently see people driving through our neighborhood, possibly looking for homes or maybe just sightseeing. And for some, I think our neighborhoods are a part of the Williamsburg experience. Unfortunately, at the other extreme, I have seen students urinating in the woods and behind houses in broad daylight during parties. I'm not passing judgment on them because I was once a student and probably did the same thing. It's what kids do. However, ultimately, it is up to the adult city leaders to make the adult decisions necessary to keep our neighborhoods clean, safe, and desirable. It seems that the city leaders should go to a greater lengths to assure that the city's neighborhoods maintain their unique charm, character, and quality of life. You will be deciding what our neighborhood and what our city becomes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker's card I have is Gina Woodward. You guys know each other? Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Gina Woodward. I live at 330 Indian Springs Road. For me, the Indian Springs neighborhood is a special place to live for many reasons. It is one of the few older neighborhoods within the city. It has history, wonderful nature, neighbors, and homes, with each one being unique in its architecture and not like newer neighborhoods where all the houses are the same. I love that it has an old-fashioned feeling where you hear kids playing in the street in all seasons, riding their bikes and scooters, splashing in the pool, riding sleds in the snow in our cul-de-sac, playing basketball in the shared playground, and playing and laughing in the yards with their friends and parents. This is what they will remember as they look back on their childhoods. We want our neighborhood to retain this atmosphere and quality of life. I have supervised and have known many William and Mary students in the years that I've worked there, and have written many recommendation letters speaking to their ability to manage a demanding academic schedule, work, service in the community, and club activities. I respect all that they do and also the careers that they go on to hold. I like the mixture of different age groups in our neighborhood and truly would like for all of us to be a community that can coexist peacefully. We have only lived there for 3+ years, but my husband Eddie had dreamed of living off Jamestown Road since he worked in Colonial Williamsburg in the 1980s. And when the time was right for us financially, we bought 330 Indian Springs Road. We work to keep up our home and yard as do others. It saddens me when I see homes that are not kept up due to absentee landlords, and yes, the tenants also have a responsibility to be good renters. This is not what we want to see happen in our neighborhood. It does diminish the overall character of the neighborhood when homes are in decline. For Christmas, Eddie gave me a pendant that was handmade in the shape of our neighborhood, which I'm wearing today. It has a red heart where our house is. Wow, what a present that was. I think this symbolizes how we feel about the Indian Springs neighborhood, that we love it, we enjoy it, and respect it for the community that it is. Isn't this what leaders of our community want to mirror by ensuring that our neighborhoods are places to feel safe, kept clean, upkept, and most of all, places we call home and some forever homes? The ARB heard our concerns and voted to not pass the houses on the 2 lots. They are the experts. It is my wish to have the City Council uphold their decision. Please help to keep this Indian Springs a special place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker's card I have is Mr. David Trichler. Good morning, sir.
Morning. David Trichler, 324 Indian Springs, and my 13th anniversary of purchasing that home and moving in, so great to be here. I'm here, my family lives there. We now have 3 daughters, 9, 6, and 3. And while this is not the scope, am I tired of finding used condoms on the side of the road? Yes, I am. Am I tired of my girls finding open bottles of beer? Yes, I am. Am I tired of seeing my daughters seeing students defecating in the woods? Yeah, I'm pretty tired of that as well. These trends have increased. I think some of the frustrations you're hearing is a systemic failure of multiple parties, but including the city on this part. So, broad context, I'm tired, right? I'm really tired. Specifically to this case, I am asking you to uphold the Architecture Review Board's unanimous denial of ARB 25-118 and 119. The question is before us is, of course, not who might rent the houses, but do they comply with the city's design review guidelines? And despite some of the prior notes that tried to poke holes at the ARB and said they were not consistent, when I review the notes to attend the meetings, I think they're very consistent on Chapter 2 of the guidelines. Enhance quality of life by preserving the community's character, desirable features. The ARB examined our neighborhood carefully. You heard 3 different reviews. This is not just a one-off. After multiple reviews, they did determine the project will, quote, change the neighborhood. It was unanimous denial. You don't see many of these. There was a determination that the proposal conflicts with the ARB's guiding guidance and principles as articulated by the city. I think one thing that shows some of the consistent back and forth is the garages and the driveway. You know, we said we don't know what will be used. You know, the landowner told the current students who I have in my classes that his intent is to build 2 more houses and put in a row of student housing because the money's good. And you see that reflected in each of these iterations. A shared driveway, right? This next one, as people have commented, 2 large garages right when you come up. That is not consistent with the neighborhood. We walk that neighborhood every day with my girls. That's a huge driveway, and you think about those 4 cars that will be there. These are parking lots of cars, impacting the aesthetic, impact the neighborhood. I would really take a look at aesthetically the driveways and purpose. That's a changing road. The architects are trying to do the best to meet the needs of the design, the person funding this, to get as many people in the homes as possible. The driveways, though, shared, not consistent. They changed that. Now 2 garages, half the size of the home you go. I look at that. I'll look at that every day with my kids. All those cars in parking lots. No disrespect to our neighbors out in Toronto or other places, and we see all those cars parked on the ground and everything. That's not our neighborhood, right? And again, my girls are in the street all the time. You have all those driveways walking right into the street. That's safety. My girls, they're 3 years old. They're on their little trikes, their scooters, having all those cars parked right there, coming right down to where our girls go around those corners. Aesthetically, safety-wise, I'm really concerned about this. I'm really concerned. Beyond this approach is firmly grounded in law. Courts have repeatedly upheld ARB decisions that advance broader preservation goals when they're tied to established guidance, as this is, taking account. Just 18 months ago in the Commonwealth in HVB versus Harborview, the Virginia Court of Appeals affirmed an ARB denial based on incompatibility, emphasizing the board's broad authority to promote harmony of design and use, and to deny applications that conflict with established guidance, Chapter 2 of our guidance. The trial court for Virginia concluded that ARB has, quote, broad powers to regulate property use in the community, to promulgate development guidelines, to promote harmony within the development, and deny applications that are contrary to those guidance. The ARB took this seriously. They looked at the impact of the community and the preservation of the neighborhood. And we are asking you to serve in your role as our elected officials, to support local citizens and the city's own review board, who follow the city's established processes, and that you uphold a decision that is consistent with the design review guidelines and entitled to judicial deference under Virginia's law. And at minimum, take a look at those driveways and the garages and what that means for the aesthetically and the safety of our citizens, including my own children. For these reasons, we respectively recommend the City Council uphold the ARB's carefully considered denial of ARB 25-118 and 119. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so that concludes all the speakers cards that I have, but if anybody else would like to come forward, they're certainly welcome to. I've got a hand here. Just come up and state your name and address for the record, please. Welcome.
Thank you for letting me speak. I have not prepared any statements. My name is Paula Kaz. I live at 306 Indian Springs Road, and my son and daughter and husband and I have lived there since 1999. My husband has been dead for a year and a half. My children are in Charlottesville and outside of Richmond. Therefore, I am alone in the house, and I plan to sell. I want you to be aware of how happily we live there as a family. My wish to sell is predicated on the fact that this house is meant for a family, for young children laughing and occupying its 3 floors. It's not meant for a senior widow who prefers apartments, frankly. The years during which we lived in Indian Springs were very happy ones. Our children violated some of the rules of the shared playground, and neighbors told us to stop that. We talked to our children and stopped that. There's an institutional memory in a neighborhood of long standing, which can be destroyed so easily, but takes years to build up. I benefited from the institutional memory of Indian Springs, and I respectfully beg, urge, and hope that people will uphold the ARB denial. The reason for that is not a dislike of college students. I love them. They don't know what it's like to sink your life savings into a home in the expectation that you will raise a family there and sell it to another young family to raise their family there. Therefore, I ask you please to consider the future of Indian Springs as the future of all of us to some degree. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Welcome.
Folks, my name is Rowan Lockwood. I'm at 141 Indian Springs Road. I just want to start by thanking the City Council for spending your early Monday morning with us discussing this issue. I want to thank all of the members of ARB who are here, who have sat through many of these meetings debating these same issues. We in Indian Springs very much appreciate all of your service to the city and all of your hard work. I haven't prepared a really beautifully written statement as many of my neighbors have, so I'm gonna go kind of off the cuff here. A couple of things that I would love for the City Council and ARB to take into consideration. One was just brought up today by the architect who did a fabulous job looking at massing. I'm a scientist, and so I respond really well to quantitative data. I would love to see square footage numbers for this house relative to the square footage of its lot versus some of the other houses. I note that in the images you showed, which I loved because you can just GIS those suckers in there, a lot of the space that you show is carports. So for example, in the house that Mr. Field already owns, that's next to these 2 vacant lots that he's looking to build the 3 houses with a shared sort of backyard situation, that house has a rather large open carport, which I think is currently included in the massing information that the architect showed earlier. I would love to see numbers. I would love to see more Indian Springs-based numbers. I noticed that there were a lot of Chandler Court, Burns Lane, numbers in there. So I think that that's an area that I would be very interested in. I'm a geologist, and so I'm super interested in that whole area because it empties into a stream on the other side of the road. It's all part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and we're already seeing erosion as they start to take down trees. It looks like the landowner has started doing some work in the playground itself. It's been paved over, which is weird because I don't think that's his property. So I'm worried about what's going to happen there, and I'm interested to see those mass numbers. To the point that another resident raised about rental properties being considered commercial property, I realize that this is usually an apartment versus house issue, but I would argue that the students that I've talked to who have Mr. Field as a landlord, they receive individual, independent leases. So all 4 of those students who are currently living in 311, have individual leases. And so across those 3 properties that are adjacent, that's gonna be 12 leases, because I know the 4 women that he has signed up to move into that 311 house next year. He's told them that he already has permission for 3 students in that house. So that's gonna be 12 leases in 3 lots. And I would just love to see maybe a legal briefing on how that corresponds to commercial building and commercial property, 3 adjacent properties with 12 leases, right, in that area. And then the last issue I wanted to raise was mentioned by my neighbor David, and this is the precedent set in 2024 by the 5800 HVB LLC versus Harbor View Commerce Association case, where an ARB denied the right of a gas station to build in a neighborhood. Now, this is a neighborhood that was zoned for commercial property, but they denied that gas station for safety reasons and aesthetic reasons. And you've heard from many of my neighbors the safety issues that we're having with traffic, with the parking of cars, with behavior in some of these rental houses, and we'd very much like to see, again, a legal briefing, maybe from the city attorney, on how this 2024 case, where an ARB denied the right, and then that ARB denial was upheld in the Virginia Court of Appeals. We would love to see a legal briefing on that and whether that also applies to this situation. In the meantime, let me just conclude by saying I have been in Indian Springs for 20 years. I love this neighborhood. I raised my daughter, who just left for college, in this neighborhood. We chose this neighborhood because of the mix of people. We thought it represented a really nice microcosm of Williamsburg, and in that time, it has really, really changed. And we moved in because it was a mix of people from all walks of life and all ages and all interests and all backgrounds, all coming together and, sharing Halloween candy and holding pizza parties in the common playground. And I would note that that has really changed over recent years. And so much of what makes the city of Williamsburg desirable is also changing. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Barna.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Barna, and I live at 135 Indian Springs Road. Thank you, City Council, for coming out today, members of the ARB. I understand that while the current designs may be more in line today with the ARB regulations and guidelines than they were last March, the properties still remain questionable. These lots are particularly small, and the buildings proposed will take up a huge percentage of those lots. And I know that some of my neighbors have mentioned that. And I understand that they have said that these are going to be for sale, but right now they're for sale for $1.2 million for very small homes on very small lots, which I think is unlikely to be successful. Especially when these homes have not yet been approved or constructed. So I don't see the actual listing of these homes as indicative of their intent to sell them. I think that we should still look at them as a commercial development. Essentially, when you look at them, and given that each home proposed would have 4 bedrooms, and we know based on Midtown Row and common practices of landlords in this city, as well as perhaps this developer's own practices, that each bedroom will have its own lease, which means that really we're looking at 8 new units, which I think there's legal precedent out there potentially that shows that the ARB actually can make determinations when it comes to that size commercial property. And I think that City Council may also have the ability to make certain decisions when it comes to that type of commercial property within a residential neighborhood. So I think that's worth further review and research before we make any final decisions. I also have concerns that are environmental. So when there's been nothing shown, and I realize we're at a design phase, but it's worth looking at. These properties are on dramatically sloped land, and I know that the renderings don't really show that. But during the construction phase and then post-construction, with the area that will be paved, I'm curious what's going to happen with that water runoff. I think that it's potential that the water is going to flow right into the street, which could be a traffic hazard. Also, across the street is our properties, but in addition to that, there's part of the creek. The creek is part of the protected watershed, so I think it's also worth looking at the potential impacts there, especially for sediment displacement and what happens when these properties are finalized. But I'm really here today with a more personal issue. See, beyond the larger implications for the neighborhood, the city, and the community, I have a very personal concern. On all the renderings, the property behind the lots is shown as a blank space, but it's not. It's actually a park for the community. It was set aside by the original developer of the neighborhood, the Williams family, for community use. The area is actually home to a swing set, picnic tables, a backboard, which my kids do use as a chalkboard, slide, and basketball hoops. When I moved to this neighborhood, this was a major selling point for me, as it was a safe place that I could take my then toddlers to play. It's an area where the neighborhood children used to gather on Halloween for pizza and then go trick-or-treating together through the neighborhood. It's an area where my own family has gathered with other neighborhood families to celebrate birthdays and other events, or even just to play. During the pandemic, and the virtual year that followed, or I guess was part of the pandemic, my children went there every single day for recess. It was a pivotal part of our community and our family. The families, or many families in the neighborhood, have been stewards of this space, taking it upon themselves to maintain it for over 60 years. This is a long-standing park. Those swings I'm talking about, they were built in the 60s. The Hornsby property, which includes the lots in question, allowed the public easement and to make access to the space easy and safe for everybody involved. When the current developer bought this property, he closed off that easement and put up no trespassing signs. Further, there was then yard debris, and then after that, cars that blocked the way to go there. I will not let my children violate trespassing signs, so they have not been able to use the space effectively. If you look at the original plot of land, you will see that there is an easement that should continue, and I have not really seen that in these current designs. I understand that that might be different than looking at house colors and shingles and things like that, but it is an important part of this property because this property is unique and has really been a part of this park since the neighborhood was conceived in the 1940s. So I just ask you to take that into consideration today as you're thinking about the design and use of this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come? Mr. Hertzler?
Good morning. Joe Hertzler. I live at 115 Archer's Hope Road, which is in the subdivision of Kings Point, which is in James City County. Up until a couple months ago, I lived at 605 College Terrace, right across the street from our mayor. We decided to move out of the city for the very reasons that we've been talking about here. But I don't want to focus on that. I want to start with why I bought the house in the first place. My wife and I always wanted to buy and restore an old house. And a conversation with Doug one day at a Colonial Williamsburg Christmas party, he said, hey, the house across the street might be coming on the market. Got in touch with the people, said I wanted to build a family home. I wanted to restore an old house and turn it into a family home. And we did. It was almost 25 years ago. But why did we choose to live there? We moved there because of the Architectural Review Board. If it had not been for the Architectural Review Board having some influence on that house and the houses around it, I would never have bought that house and spent the amount of money, time, effort, money that we did to restore it and do additions over the years. It was because the Architectural Review Board had a hand in the control of that property. The Architectural Review Board was created to preserve architecture. It's the controlling body that governs the architectural preservation districts. They are intended to preserve architecture. What are the things that it takes to preserve architecture? Definitely there's laws, ordinances, design guidelines that need to be adhered to. But the most important thing to preserve architecture is you have to have a willing owner. You have to have somebody who's willing to put up with the quirks of an old building, put in the time, effort, money that it takes to preserve an old building. And if you don't have that willing owner, you're not going to preserve architecture. Everybody here today, these are all willing owners. They've fallen in love with these houses. They want to put in what it takes to live in these sometimes quirky old buildings. Did I leave because I fell out of love with the house? No, we very much, it was an incredibly hard decision to move. I stayed up many nights, late into the night with my 7-year-old grandson who lives with us, just sobbing over leaving his house. He didn't want to leave. None of us wanted to leave. But we felt like as a family, we just didn't want to be in this strain of constant possible college students. So if Architecture Review Board is all about preserving architecture, the thing I want you guys to really think about is, do these buildings proposed in Indian Springs help preserve architecture? You know, in some ways, maybe they check off all the boxes. Maybe they have the right windows, the right siding, the right color, maybe even the right massing. Although, hint, there's a really big open window there for you guys on the massing. But do they preserve the architecture of the neighborhood? Do they create a situation where people want to buy these houses? Not these houses that are being built, but the houses surrounding it. Do they help to create that kind of environment? I'd say they don't. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Welcome, and again, just state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. The name is Joseph Heyman, 130 Indian Springs Road. We're talking about history, I believe. I'm appropriately here for history. We bought our house nearly 50 years ago, and we bought it because we absolutely fell in love with Williamsburg and this district. We loved the fact that the neighborhood was stable, that it was interesting, that it was varied, and it was near the college. We love students. We not only bought the house, we invested in the house, as did the previous owner, nearly doubling the square footage of the house. Why did we put so much money and time into the house? Well, of course, because we love the neighborhood, but we also found the neighborhood stable and a good investment in the future. We raised our daughter there. We had a lovely experience through these 50 years. Why am I standing here? I'm concerned about the future of this neighborhood. And the reason I'm concerned is not the color of these new houses, potential homes. I know you can't make a decision based on whether it might be a rental, but I ask you, what is the nature of the historic district? What is the nature of preservation? What is the nature of the character of the neighborhood? My wife and I love the character of the neighborhood. We love the diversity of those who live in Indian Springs. If that is going to be part of your decision, then it is clear from what you're hearing that the decision you make today will have significant impact on the future of that neighborhood. I ask you to please recognize the importance of what you're facing. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Welcome. Thank you. Anybody else? Please. Welcome.
Morning, Mr. Pons and Council. I'm Steve Miles, and I live at 130 Chandler Court, which obviously is not Indian Springs. However, my neighborhood is affected by this decision. All of our neighborhoods are. That's my concern today. I take you on a history lesson. It involves the previous owner. If you will Google Lois Hornsby and study the good that she did for this city and the surrounding counties, then ask yourself, what would Lois do here? Also, I would ask you to look at this neighborhood, Indian Springs, and one of the finest homes that has been developed over time and just tireless effort to restore it to its beauty is directly across the street from the lots we're talking about. And I have no relationship, really deep relationship with the community yet. I've been here for 7 years, but I love Williamsburg and I love this city. And I tend to, make my home a better place, like the home that's been enhanced across the street from these properties. I'd ask you to make the right decision here and deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Carr, welcome.
Morning, my name is Bill Carr, live at 316 Indian Springs Road, and I guess our house has been referred to just with the past speaker. We've spent a whole lot of money in fixing it up, and this past April it was on the statewide garden tour. I don't know how many more times the statewide garden tour is going to have houses represented in Indian Springs. The Dashlers and Maleckis also had their house at the time. I was not going to speak this morning, but there's been so many matters and topics brought up. I wrote them down. I'm going to try to knock them off real quick. Missy and I have lived at our house for 34 years. I've been in banking for 44 years. Regarding the topic of LLCs, yes, anyone can have a real estate in an LLC, but among the reasons you do that is to protect liability. If one has students in their house throwing parties, that landlord wants to have some part of protection. Another speaker, I think it was Ms. Barner, talked about the basketball court on the playground. Literally, last week, Thursday or Friday, Mr. Fields or his representatives took down the basketball goal for the children. Left the big one, but dismantled and took down that goal. He also spray painted the concrete with some kind of paint that's already worn off partially in this past rain we had this weekend. So why do I bring that up? I bring up the behavior of this landlord and the disrespect that he's showing the current tenant residents of Indian Springs. He has alleged, or not alleged, he has stated in the BZA meeting that he has a right to drive up to his carport. Someone else mentioned there is a 6-foot easement. It's recorded. There is no right-of-way given to Mr. Field. So his basis of he can drive up, he'd have to be crossing that 6-foot easement, right? We are going to take steps to have that 6-foot easement cleared and demarcated so that no one can impede David Trishler's children or the Crawford's children to walk up that easement and go to that park. That park was dedicated to the residents of Indian Springs. Already, someone who has owned a house or at least had tenants in the house for 6 months is already starting to impede individuals to be able to go up to that to that area and enjoy playing basketball. We're afraid he's going to turn that into an amenity for his 12 renters to play basketball at night, maybe have lights up. We don't know. I don't know that for sure. But we're already having issues with the students. My wife didn't mention, after our daughter was married at the end and we all come back to our house, and there were police there and rowdy students, we don't know for sure, but our daughter's rear view windshield was shattered. Never been shattered before, coincidental on that night, but I just kind of think, why was that window shattered? Okay, we are seeing our property values to decrease. We have a lot of investment in our house. We'd hate to see it, the value continue to deteriorate. The ARB did what it was supposed to do. Not look discreetly at one issue about whether or not he can to allow these two houses to be built and just look only at the construction and the paint. They took the bigger picture, and I hope you all take the bigger picture. I know you're working on initiatives to help homeowners be able to buy in the neighborhoods, and I know that in your legislative session, you're going to the assembly and trying to get more ability to regulate certain things. So I applaud you on that. Very, very important. Last thing, if Mr. Field is not going to rent it to students, it's real simple. Put a restrictive covenant on the deed saying he's not going to rent it that way, okay? So he has the ability to demonstrate that he is not going to have 8 students, 4 and 4 in each unit. So that's an easy way to make sure that we don't have additional students, because Indian Springs is under pressure, under big pressure right now. And once Indian Springs goes, then you got Burns and you got Walnut Hills. Please help us. Please uphold the ARB's decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. We'll close the public hearing and come back to council for some comments, or questions. Ms. Shelton, are you aware, is there a public easement through the subject properties?
It's not a public easement, it's private to the neighborhood.
So it belongs to the neighborhood?
It does.
Okay, and is that demonstrated in the renderings that the architects provided?
I don't know the answer to that.
Say that last part again?
I don't know the answer to that.
If we were to, I know we had 3 charges, 3 options to reverse, modify, or uphold. So if we modified ARB's decision, would that send it back to the applicant to redesign and come back to who?
The ARB.
Okay, so the ARB would then look at, if we make a determination that we want to see modifications to the massing or the garages out front or the amount of asphalt for our parking and impervious surfaces, we would send that back to ARB. The designer would have to go back to ARB.
That's right.
Okay. Any other questions?
I did have one question for Ms. Shelton. So it's throughout this process, it's been mentioned about the applicant and other properties and violations, and what authority do we have to apply any of that to this particular case?
This is not a rezoning application. So you are looking at your code and determining whether or not the architectural guidelines have been met. It doesn't matter that there have been building code or zoning violations at the property or neighboring property.
Thank you.
Yes, for Ms. Shelton. What is the role of the comprehensive plan in almost any question, but we'll keep it to the one like today?
The comprehensive plan are guidelines. City Council has a general idea of what they would like to see, and the comprehensive plan is that objective, right? That there are single-family neighborhoods that have certain character. A piece of that character is the architecture of the buildings, which is why you have ARB guidelines.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, then the comprehensive plan, we think of it as the big picture,
That's
the
right.
20,000-foot level. And then we implement the comprehensive plan
Through the zoning ordinance.
through different pieces of the zoning ordinance and other mechanisms in the city code.
That's right.
Okay. And so if there is a legal dispute, what is the weight of the comprehensive plan in that?
the zoning ordinance is going to take precedence over the comprehensive plan. What is in the city code will take precedence over what is in the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a guide. The zoning ordinance implements the comprehensive plan. If the zoning ordinance in this instance provides that, you have the ability to look at architecture, which is what the state enabling legislation says, then it's going to be limited to that.
Okay, thank you.
Question? Barb, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, just a follow-up question. I heard some comments about the number of students or renters that would be in this house. There's currently an ordinance that doesn't allow more than 3 unrelated folks.
That's correct.
So the presumption that this would automatically be a house with 4 people legally has
It's
not been
not
established.
correct.
Okay, so I think we all recognize that there are homes within the city that currently are operating more than 3 unrelated folks in the house. Okay, so if approved and built, this doesn't mean that automatically there would be 4 people, because there's a process in
That's
which
right.
a landlord would have to do. Okay. You know, so there are a lot of comments that I certainly do appreciate, and I would say there's narrowly a person in this room that's lived in the same neighborhood longer than I have in the city, going on 50-plus years, 55, 56 years. You know, preserving our neighborhoods is absolutely important. I think there's one of the issues for me is that to suggest that having a rental property in our neighborhood is an inappropriate use doesn't sit well with me, because not all renters are the same. And to make a determination about the eventual renters in this house, I think is unfair. And I don't have the luxury to evaluate applicants' applications speculation. I think each of us in this room and in the city expect this council to be fair and unbiased when making determinations on any applicant, because that's the appropriate way that we should act. We should not act with prejudice, and I think that's an expectation of all of us in this room. So trying to make a determination about the eventuality of this being a rental property and being rented to a number of unrelated folks that may be a disturbance is you know, that's only the hypothetical, and we can't make a decision on the hypothetical. If I were to look at, you know, we have a property owner who has rights in the Commonwealth of Virginia to build on these lots, which takes me to another question, Ms. Shelton. If this body sitting here today upholds the decision of the ARB, what is the next step for the property owner?
Property owner has the right to appeal that decision to the circuit court.
What would be the circuit court's method of determining? Would they be looking at our guidelines?
It would be looking to determine whether or not the city council followed the guidelines.
Okay. There'd be an opportunity for public input in the courts?
No.
At what point of denial would a court deem a taking of this property?
Well, in this case, I don't think we're dealing with a taking. I think we would be looking at injunctive and declaratory relief, that the city council abused its discretion in not administering the city code correctly. If you were to adopt zoning regulations that prohibited someone from building on an otherwise buildable lot, that would be a taking.
So these lots, I think we need to figure out this easement, in fact. if in fact there's an easement that needs to be satisfied with this application. Some comments about the lots being buildable, stormwater runoff. There are processes within the city code that would deal with these matters.
That's right. City Council just adopted revisions of the erosion and sediment control ordinances.
Okay. Well, I'll hold some thoughts for later, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. First of all, I just want to thank everyone that's taken the time to be here today, to speak here publicly, but also have contacted us through email to share your concerns. I think we can all agree it's a difficult and emotionally charged decision. You know, at one point early on in this process, Councilwoman Kern-Scherer and I took the opportunity to walk the neighborhood with a couple residents to see some of the concerns about other rental properties, and the term that kept coming up was tipping point, that you're at a tipping point between owner-occupied and rentals in Indian Springs neighborhood. And I don't disagree with that. You know, and as Ms. Shelton's pointed out, at this particular time, there's certain limitations that we have to abide by that are law. And as Mr. Carr said in his presentation, City Council is looking at some different options, some legislation that would hopefully help protect these neighborhoods in the future. Unfortunately, that's not in place today, and we can't enforce it retroactively. So one of the things that Ms. Griffin shared early on in her presentation in the city code, that 21861 permitted uses clearly states, nothing in this article shall be construed to prevent the use of any land, building, or structure permitted by the regulations of the zoning district in which said land, building, or structure is located. And also to Ms. Shelton's response to a question that the zoning ordinance takes precedent over comprehensive plan. I know all of council, as well as all of you out there, have spent a considerable amount of time looking at all aspects of this proposal, this application. I did want to note some things that stand out to me from the ARB's decision. The first being the applicant made all the requested revisions by the ARB from the architectural character. The other thing was no specific code base or design review guideline justification was identified to support the denial of the application. Historically, the ARB is really good they're very specific about why an application is being denied. This was not a collaborative decision, which led me to the next thing, as two of the board members in the October 14, 2025 meeting minutes acknowledged the legal limitations of the board, one stating sympathetic to the public comments, felt legally constrained, and noted that neither the ARB nor City Council has the authority under state law to deny the application as proposed, a limitation clearly articulated by the city attorney. It was also noted that the board's authority is limited to exterior design considerations, does not extend to interior configuration. Another board member acknowledged the same legal limitations outlined by the city attorney and expressed sympathy for the neighbors, but stated he could not support the project due to potential impact on the neighborhood, despite recognizing the constraints that had been presented to them. So for me, one thing that stood out to me is when the applicant is going through these three phases, he's got a false expectation that he's meeting all the guidelines set forth by the ARB and that he's going to be accepted. He's made a number of changes, and then also think that it set a false expectation that we have some legal basis for denying this. It doesn't mean that I'm not sympathetic to the neighborhoods. Indian Springs has been mentioned. Other neighborhoods fall in the same position. But looking at everything, if you review this application, the codes, the design review guidelines, the law, it's hard to put the city in a legal position that cannot be defended. And losing that on appeal means that the city is incurring significant costs, attorney's fees, potential damages, and at the end of the day, the project's moving forward anyway. So that's where I struggle with, in good conscience, putting the city in that position. I know it's not a popular decision, but I have to put my personal feelings, whether I agree with the neighborhood, I have to put my emotions aside, and I have to base a decision on what's grounded in the law rather than my personal feelings and emotions. So I'll leave it there right now.
Thank you. Mr. Prince.
Thank you. So, as with many situations, this matter illustrates that multiple things can be true at the same time. It can be, and it is true, that there have been deep division and conflict in Indian Springs neighborhood related to some of the rental properties owned by the applicants, and that the neighbors and the community members are suffering real concerns and hurt. That is true, right? Multiple comments today and in other meetings have made that very clear, and so many times that I've talked to many of you in the room. At the same time, it can be, and I think is true, that the Architectural Review Board of the city does not have the authority to deny this petition. So I have thought very deeply and carefully about each argument made in defense of the ARB's decision and the arguments for upholding that decision. I have considered at length that the proposition that the character of a neighborhood is more than materials and is measured in much more than design elements or how structures are used. And I completely agree. Character and quality of life is more than paint colors and shutters and design. And so who has a role in doing that, in preserving the character and the quality of life in Williamsburg? Well, we all do, right? And in the city, and the way the city is structured, different divisions of the city have a different role in making sure that character and quality of life is preserved. The Planning Commission has a role in preserving character and quality of life in the decisions that they make that are about use and about zoning and about who can do what where and who should be able to do what where. The City Council has a role in preserving quality of life and character in the decisions that we make as a legislative body. And the Architectural Review Board has a role in determining and preserving quality of life and character in the decisions that they make with respect to design. That is their job. That is their role in preserving the quality of life and the character of our neighborhoods. And together, as a holistic pieces of the puzzle, the different divisions of the city and the different departments of the community work together to do just that. And that is our goal, and that is our aspiration, everything we do. But what it also means is that the ARB can't wander into the lane of the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission can't wander into the lane of the ARB either, right? And the City Council, as much as we may want to, can't wander into the lane of the ARB and the charge that they have under the city code. So, as has been said, the legal fact remains, right, that the ARB's role is to adjudicate based on design. And I have looked, and it has been mentioned, Article 9 of the zoning ordinance and Chapter 7 of the design review guidelines tell us what authority the ARB has in making their decisions. And the criteria in Section 21.855 of Article 9 focuses on design and architectural compatibility with the surrounding AP district. The design review guidelines of the AP2 district for new buildings provide the necessary criteria of materials and doors and windows and shutters and roof lines and all of this for new structures. There is no mention of taking any of use or other adjacent factors of the behavior of the applicant, of an adjacent property, or the applicant's intentions, nothing about taking those into account in making the design review decisions. Yes, there is sometimes, there are a few mentions of quality of life and character, but it is within the context of architecture. It is within the context of their job to review the design guidelines. Now, we've been asked today, to uphold the denial based on applicants' actions with respect to other property, the behavior of college students, the potential uses of this property. And I cannot, under the design review guidelines, find a way that we can do that and be within the bounds of the law. And ARB did not give any reason in their denial related to the driveway, the size, the topography. None of that was in their reasoning when they approved the application. As has been mentioned several times, they are the experts in design. They did do a deep dive in this. They kept sending back over and over again like issues of design, and none of this was ever mentioned. And so at the end, none of their bases were about design. What I hear, really, honestly, what it comes down to is we have an unfortunate situation where the problem identified and the proposed solutions do not line up. It just doesn't line up. What I hear at the heart of the community concern is a fear that their neighborhood is becoming a commercial enterprise. I live on Newport Avenue, okay? I live around, I get it, all right? So I know where this concern comes from. But that single family, I hear the concern, right? That single family dwellings designed to be used as rental properties should not really be single family dwellings, right? Which is a use permitted in AP2 district, but instead should be treated under the law as commercial businesses. But the thing about it is that this is not an issue that ARB was designed or equipped or authorized to address. That's a much more difficult question of city code and the Virginia law and what it allows and does not allow us to do as a municipality. And as been mentioned, we are working on that even, all the time. So I see my friends and my neighbors here, and I see their concern. And in so many ways, I want to do what the room wants me to do, right? And allow the ARB decision to stand, because I know that it would provide a lot of relief to people that I care about and that I respect very much. But it's clear to me that that would require me to stretch the law beyond recognition and in effect ignore it. So unfortunately, when the ARB made, when the ARB made their decision, they knew that City Council was going to hear the appeal, right? And that's a luxury that the City Council doesn't have. So for these reasons, I intend to uphold the denial.
Yes, well, I first wanted to start off and just thank everyone for coming out and voicing, whether it was voicing your concerns and input today or over email. I truly want everyone to know that your feedback does not fall on deaf ears. Also, I would like to thank just all the residents of Indian Springs who came out today as well, and for your dedication, investments over the decades, and also just stewardship of the Indian Springs community and neighborhood as well. I wanted to just say, regardless of the verdict that we have today as well, that, I truly believe this is not a reflection of, or like a lack of appreciation for the unique charm of the Indian Springs neighborhood. However, I will keep my remarks brief with much already being said. I believe as council we have a obligation to abide by the design review guidelines and also just the code that's in place as well. And also we have an obligation to act as non-biased actors regardless of the decision, and to rightfully apply the legal guidelines that are in place. And due to this, I cannot personally stand by the ARB's verdict.
Ms. Ramsey?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's come out today. And I'm sorry that I'd already scheduled an out-of-town trip and could not be there today. I appreciate all of the comments. I particularly appreciate the comments from Councilwoman Kern Shear and Vice Mayor Denton and others, because so much of my feelings are reflected in their statements. I too live in a downtown neighborhood on Griffin Avenue and have seen many of the properties change ownership. And today's special meeting is called for City Council to assume the role of ARB and to do the right thing regarding this issue. But what is the right thing? Because right can be defined as that which is morally honorable, acceptable, and for the common good. But right is also about the facts and the law. And as an elected official, I, like my fellow city council members, are bound to follow the law. However, I cannot support something that has created circumstances that I feel are contrary to the best interest of this community. I shall therefore abstain if the vote is to overturn the ARB's decision, signaling a desire for revisions to the existing laws which have created this situation. And as Mr. Carr mentioned, we are looking at various options and hopes to make some revisions in the future. And that is one thing that I will work towards. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. Well, so just come back to me. You know, as I said before, as I sit here as a council member, I don't have the luxury that the ARB took upon themselves to deny this for reasons that were unstated. And to echo Mrs. Kern-Shear, you know, we have and Vice Mayor Dent, we have the responsibility and the obligation to uphold the code that we have established, ARB's guidelines, and that's our job here today. And unfortunately, you know, I don't agree with some of the comments that were made by the ARB members in their denial of this, and so I too would have to reverse sit with reversing the decision of the ARB. And I'll just add that, you know, to my question earlier about if we decided to modify this, I have no faith that if we send it back to ARB that the decision would be any different, and it would come back to us. So that's a concern that I have. You know, I am concerned about the double garages in front of the house. I do believe that there are some architectural elements that aren't fitting the neighborhood, and so I don't know how to move forward with that conflict, other than to suggest that maybe we do modify it if others felt that the massing and the design wasn't in keeping with the neighborhood. Then where would that go? Yeah. Any other thoughts?
No.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I move that City Council reverse the decision of the ARB of October 14, 2025 regarding ARB 25-118 and 25-119.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McKay.
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Abstain.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kern-Shear?
Aye.
Okay. Takes us now to open forum, which is an opportunity for anybody who would like to come forward to speak. Yes, ma'am. Would you like to come to the microphone, please? You just identify yourself for the record.
Paula Kaz, 306 Indian Springs Road. My question is it within the council's capacity to suggest modifications or revisions? And if so, how would that be conveyed? How would that proceed? Thank you. Shall I sit down now?
Yes. Anybody else? Mr. Livingston?
So I have a simple question. I think everyone in this room understands that we have a serious problem. I tried to lay out the seriousness of it. I mean, perhaps I could be melodramatic and say for for me personally, it's kind of an existential problem. So I was just wondering if you could offer some solutions about how we go forward. Or are you saying because of the present laws, you guys are just going to suffer?
Anybody else like to come forward? Ms. Barna?
I would just like to ask, like Mr. Hart did, just what steps we can do moving forward, especially with the potential environmental impacts, the water runoff, the potential zoning issues, as well as making sure that the community maintains access to our special park community space. In addition to that, I would say if as a community and a city, we are anticipating greater population density within the neighborhoods, I would really ask that city council and city planning really consider what we do about that to make everyone safe. I've nearly been hit by cars. All of my neighbors have nearly been hit by cars. And the students, I've seen a lot of close encounters for them as well as they try to walk to class. We need sidewalks. We need safe biking lanes, and we're eventually going to need crosswalks even within the neighborhoods themselves. So I would just ask, are we looking at that? Are we taking surveys? Are we thinking about ways to slow traffic through the neighborhoods, such as speed bumps or other speed curbing devices, even within the smaller neighborhoods like our own? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. None, I'll close the open forum, and I will just say to one of the questions, and then generally we don't get into response, but because of the sensitivities, had council decided to modify we would send it back to the ARB to have a conversation and work with the builder. That would happen. In terms of the impact on the environment, stormwater, building, all of that, as the developer submits applications, has to meet certain requirements of how to make adjustments to make sure that the new buildings conform to all the standards that are set forward. Is that a fair answer, Ms. Griffin? Yes. Okay. All right. Nothing else. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernscher?
Aye.
You're adjourned.